What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. It's time to get serious about lights. I've lit up all my large-scale builds since the days of Utapau, but with the exception of that one, all the lights have played a very small, insignificant role in the mocks, lighting up hallways or small rooms. But Mygeeto has come and demanded a lighting setup more complicated and extensive than anything I've ever done before. I'm going to be figuring out how to run wires through the bridge, up through the floor, up into the walls to power the lights. I'm also going to be building the large main pillar that's going to hold up the main bridge and hope and pray it does not get in the way of the battery pack, because if it does, we're gonna have some problems. There's lots to do, so don't forget to execute order 66 on that like button. Let's get building. We dipped our toes into lighting during Mygeeto week 2, and now it's time to really dive in. Thinking about lighting up a build can be intimidating. There are all kinds of options and color variations to choose from, and there are no instructions on how exactly to do it. But today I'm working with the basics. A single LED light, an expansion board, and a battery pack. All you need to light a mock. I get all my lighting supplies from Light My Bricks. Their stuff is high quality and integrates with Lego really well. You can even connect brick and plate on top of them without causing any damage to the wires, so you don't have any exposed wires in your builds. I'm trying out their newer AA battery packs. It's much beefier than the smaller ones I was using, and while it'll be harder to put into the mock, it does give me a lot more power, so instead of needing multiple smaller power sources, I should only need this one big one. I split the bridge into 3 sections, with each one being made up of 6 16 by 16 plates. Splitting it into sections instead of trying to build it all at once will make the construction of it all much easier and more organized, and will help me know where things like the lights and battery box will need to go. This second section will be the most complicated because it's going to be where all the lighting stuff is. This is going to be like the heart of the bridge. I created some custom plates with holes in them. This should allow me to run wires through the floor of my bridge. I made my own 16 by 16 plates with special holes in them. I want to keep the design of each bridge section as similar as possible so I know what parts I'll need and where everything will go. Unfortunately, I ran out of 2x2 slopes that run along the top and bottom of the bridge, so I'm gonna have to add those in later. But thanks to the ocean of parts left over from Coruscant, Mygeeto, and Utapau, I should have all the rest of the parts I need for the bridge. That's why it's so important to be smart and think long term when building mocks. Think about how you would be able to reuse the pieces you're getting, and try and plan multiple mocks you would like to do with the parts you're currently ordering. Once this section is somewhat done, it's time to connect it to the bridge and see where the lights are going to go. All right, the second bridge panel is in place. Everything's looking good. I've got that prototype pillar underneath, which is good because I need to figure out where exactly the main pillar is going to sit and how it's gonna, go through the bridge and sit on the bridge. So it'll be nice to have that in there to help me visualize. I decided I'm gonna put the battery pack kind of in the middle of this panel just because this is kind of the middle of the bridge. I was anticipating having 3 sections. So we've got 1, 2, and then a third one. So this will be in the middle. I wanna try and run the lights so that everything is being lit by this one pack, because I don't wanna have to rip up this bridge section to add in another battery pack, because I'd have to pull up like literally everything, because I'd have to add in these special plates with the holes in them. So that's just something I don't want to get into. I want to leave this built, just save me time. Now, these lights and the lights that are going to be on this bridge are great. They are within range of the battery pack and the connecting station. The issue I'm having is these furthest 2 lights. You can see this light doesn't even come close to reaching, but I have another tool up my sleeve. I've got this wire right here. This one isn't a light, it's just a single wire, but it has the little connector pieces at each end. So it basically acts as an extension cord. So my plan is to have another one of these connecting stations, probably sitting like right here. And I'm going to run the wire underneath the tile, have it connect into here, and then this extension cord is essentially going to connect this connecting station to that connecting station, thus being able to light up these furthest lights. So it's essentially going to look like this. And remember, all of this is going to be underneath the bridge. I'm just setting it up here on top to kind of help myself get the layout and figure out the spacing of everything. But with those all plugged in, you can see I can power the furthest lights. And even better, I don't have to rip up this bridge section to stick this connecting piece underneath it, because what I plan on doing is just sticking it to the side here like that. And then I'm gonna build like a little chunk of snow, or I can build a chunk of debris and just slide it over the top of that. And then I will continue running the rest of the wires underneath the tile, so you won't even know that's there. Another option I thought of is scooting this battery pack closer so that it sits kind of like right here, because then you could see I can reach the original light right here, and I won't need this connecting piece, but then that means this battery pack is gonna be super far away from these lights. So I think either way, regardless of where, if I put the battery pack here or over there, some of the lights are gonna need to be connected by an extension piece just because of how long the bridge is. The nice thing with only having one central power source is there's only one place I'll need to go to be able to turn on the entire bridge instead of like pulling up different panels on every single section to, turn on different lights. So now that I have a better idea of what the layout's gonna look like, I can pull up this section of the bridge and finish the underside because it's very much unfinished, and then I can figure out where exactly I'm gonna put the battery pack and how I'm gonna access it. The underside, while not really visible, is really important because it's what gives the bridge a lot of its strength and rigidity. The Technic bars running widthwise across the bottom have two functions. First, they're gonna make it so the bridge doesn't sag, and second, the holes allow me to run wires through them. I was gonna have the battery box in the middle of the bridge, but I realized that's not gonna work because the big pillar holding up the main bridge will also be running through and sitting on the middle of the bridge. I thought about moving the box closer to the finished section, but I think that'll be too far for the lights at the other end of the bridge to be able to reach it. So I decided to stick it on the other side of the pillar, and I strung the lights closest to the rock wall with an extension cord, and it turns out they can still reach the main expansion board. And with the box being this close to the other end of the bridge, all the lights on that side should be able to connect to it easily since they won't be as far as those lights by the rock wall are. Now that I know where the box is going, I need to secure it inside the bridge. I want it to be low enough under the floor that the layer of tile on the bridge will cover it up, so I'm basically going to build a little basin for it to sit in. I do have one complaint about this box. It's just over 7 studs wide and 9 studs long, making it very inconvenient to work into a Lego build since Lego mostly makes parts in even numbers. So this box doesn't match up with any parts very well. Instead of just needing to pop up one of the 6x8 plates, I have to tear out a lot more than that and then create an odd numbered hole in the floor, and odd numbered designs don't really fit into Lego builds super easily. But since I'm just building a box, it's not a huge deal. I also decided to swap in a bigger expansion board because I'm running all 8 lights to this section. Plus, if that becomes too much for the battery box, I want there to be space to be able to add in another power source. And since it's all going to be upside down, I want to make sure the expansion board is nice and secure so it isn't dangling in midair, putting stress on the wires. It's crazy how long it took to plan and wire such a relatively simple build, but this is my first time doing something like this. But it does look pretty cool so far, like a system of veins, and makes the build feel alive. Let me know in the comments what you think of my lighting setup so far. I want to get the base of the main pillar built as well, so that second bridge section will have something to rest on, and so I know where the top part will be sitting on the bridge. I'm gonna be so annoyed if it's covering the battery box. I was having trouble deciding where to put it on these base plates so it would line up with the bridge, when I realized I can just build the pillar on its own base plate and then slide that into place when it's done. It's gonna look pretty similar to the smaller pillar, but it will be much blockier just because it's wider and longer, so the sides will be flatter. I'm excited to build the other main pillar because that one is gonna have a maintenance platform on it with pipes, ladders, and other cool stuff. Plus, in the comics, we see battle droids climbing up buildings and towers, and so I thought it would be cool to have them scaling that pillar to mount a counterattack on the bridge as a fun Easter egg. Because this pillar is going to be at a different angle from the bridge, I won't be able to connect them together with studs, so I'm just tiling off the top so the bridge can rest on it without actually being connected. The second bridge has its own supports anyway, so it doesn't really need to be connected to this one. I went to put the pillar in place and realized the base plate it's on is way too big because when I line it up with the others, the pillar isn't even close and the base plates can't sit on top of each other. Let me tell you, this pillar is thick. I had to go full Big Brother mode and put it in a headlock just to get it off the base plate. I think I might need a permit to handle this thing because it's definitely a weapon. Once on the smaller base plate, I removed the bridge and put it on a smaller base plate as well. Plus, there's nothing going underneath the bridges, so there's no reason to have those giant, mostly empty base plates just sitting there. I do need to plate off part of the bridge underside so it can sit on the pillar. I'm not going to plate off the whole thing just yet because I have to run more wires, so I just have to take them off anyways. I'm also trying out rows of alternated 2x4 brick instead of Technic beams since they're a lot cheaper and I can just run the wires through the gaps in the brick. I've done a lot of tall, big builds in the past, and one thing that really comes in handy is this torpedo level. It helps me know if builds are lining up correctly or if stuff is leaning or if my tables are level. In this case, the level showed me the bridge was sagging slightly above the pillar, so I added in another row of plate to bring it up to the right height. At last, the second bridge is as complete as I can make it and it's in place. The big pillar is done and lined up in the right spot and the lights have all been wired. After all the tedious building, wiring, and measuring, it's time to see the fruits of my labors. I love moments like this. You spend days on a tedious project, things go wrong, you have to rebuild, but at last, you're done and you get to step back and take a moment to behold your finished masterpiece. The lights look amazing. They're spaced apart perfectly and the yellow tint gives it that gritty industrial vibe I was looking for. Lights, when done right, add so much life and realism to your minifigs and just the MOC in general. Plus they can give you some awesome low-key light shots like this. The battery box fits in its home great and is low enough I can run a row of tile across the top covering it up. The main pillar fits under the bridge nicely, and that tan brick represents where the top part of the pillar will sit, and it's really close to the light box. But as long as I have just enough space to be able to remove a tile to access the switch, I'll be fine. It's good to have everything wired and laid out, but I'm not in the clear yet. One challenge still remains: covering all those wires. They're gonna sit under the tile of the bridge, which means they won't be able to run as far as they are now, so hopefully I'll still have enough length to account for that. I did get lucky with this expansion board because it sits right on top of the snowbank, so it'll be super easy to cover up, and it's really close to where I'm gonna have my flame troopers, so if I want to, I can light up the jets of flame shooting from their guns. Now it's time for everyone's favorite part of the weekly Mygeeto update, the rock work.
You can't keep getting away with it!
Don't worry, I'm not gonna make you watch too much of what I did since it's nothing new. I am, however, working on a pretty tricky part. This jog in the mountain runs at the same angle as the bridge. The reason it's so tricky is because I have to meet up with the other side of the mountain here and have as much of this middle part be flat so the main bridge will have a good place to meet up with the rock work. So I can't just gradually angle the rock work until it's past the bridge or it won't be in line with the other side. Okay, that's it. The boring rock work talk is over. The reason I'm trying to hammer it out so quickly is because the entire rest of the build will be supported by it, so I can't really start anything else. That's the problem with suspended or raised builds. You have to get your base or foundation done first instead of getting to use the table, floor, or whatever it is you're working on as your foundation, which is what I did with Coruscant. But for some reason, these are the types of builds I gravitate to. I like the challenge, and while the beginning can be tedious, the end result is always worth it. I'm hoping to be all done with rock work in about 3 weeks, then everything will be a lot more interesting and there'll be more building to do in each update. And speaking of building, I have a really cool custom walker I'm going to make next week. You guys know how much I love World War II, and this vehicle is the perfect blend of Star Wars and World War II artillery. Man, watching those lights come on was such a cool experience. I turned off all the other lights, turned on some music, and just stood there soaking in the moment. This was a tough week, both in and outside of my channel, so to be able to stand there and think, man, I built and wired this with no instructions, and it turned out like this, was a real confidence booster and really lit a fire under me to continue giving my best to this MOC and keep grinding. I can't wait to show you guys the custom walker I found that I'm going to be building next week, and I'm also going to be starting on the tunnel entrance. I know, I promise that every week, but the rock work just wasn't in the right place, but now it's time. I'm going to be trying something new with that section, something I've only done once before for the mouth of the tunnel, which is inspired by Rich Boy J's epic Starkiller base. So you don't want to miss out on all the action going down next week. That being said, that wraps it up for this update. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about everything down below in the comments, and I'll catch you next time. But until then, happy building.